Do a little dance every single time. It's almost always the same dance. All right. It looks like we are synced and good to go. So, welcome back, everyone, to another Soul Connection call. I am so delighted to be here with a new friend of mine, Kristin, to have an open conversation about business and beyond and just see, as always, where the conversation takes us. So, Kristin, if you'd go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, Safrianna, I'm so happy to be here. My name is Kristin Quattlebaum. I am a former corporate hustler turned purpose guide and healer. I've been traveling with my 19-year-old kitty cat since December of 2020. I am a kombucha groupie, diehard fan. Yeah, I love music. Put me in front of a jukebox and I can be a kid in a candy store all day long. And yeah, that's me.
I love so many of these little details, like kombucha. We're gonna have to talk about kombucha at some point during this conversation because that's just fun. So, just in case you don't know me, I am Safrianna Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide. I'm CEO of Living Lunas, and my mission is to uplift other people because I believe we rise together, and by uplifting others, we uplift ourselves. So, I am so excited to have this conversation with you. We met, I guess we were introduced by a mutual friend or contact, Deb Porter, I believe, who just does incredible things in the world. And she set us up via email, and we went back and forth for a while, and we finally got face to face. And I felt this kinship with you, of course, when I got to see your little kitty friend who your venerable kitty friend. What's her name again?
Harley.
Harley, yes. She's one letter away from our venerable dog, who is like a little ancient creature now. And like, I just love that you have this nomadic lifestyle. And I love that you specifically say, like, out of that corporate hustle culture, because that is something I was never corporate, but I was in the public school system, and then I was in the nonprofit, and then I was in the therapy agency setting, and kind of just seeing money focused world instead of purpose focused world. So what made you take that leap away? Like, what was it in your soul or in your energy that said, like, I can't do the hustle thing anymore?
I still, side note, consider the worlds you were in very corporate. I mean,
They
but
are.
corporate, I kind of just look at as like this overarching system, if you will. And so definitely I can see that no matter how big or small the agencies were, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I had decided I grew up with two very hardworking parents. Both my parents were in the Army. And I just learned to work, from being a kid. And so I decided that when I got out of college, I was going to work on my purpose first above anything else, right? Relationships, anything. I was just dead set on finding my purpose. So I put my head down and started working. And I struggled to find where I belonged. Like, I was like, what is my path here? All these people around me are like, I want to be an accountant. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a chiropractor. And I was like, yeah, I don't have like the one thing that I want to be. And so I saw this TED Talk by Emily Wapnick, and it was called Why Some of Us Don't Have Just One True Calling. And for the first time, like, she explained this dynamic, that we find something and we get really good at it. And then like a couple of years later, we hit a wall, and then we find the next thing and we're super excited. And then we get really good at it, and then we hit a wall. And for the first time, I felt like, wow, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And she called us multi-potentialites, and she goes into like all the gifts of multi-potentialites and all of that, which I'll let you guys watch if you want to. But I kept reaching out to my mentors in corporate and asking them, like, where do you think I belong? Like, I was asking everyone else except for myself. And what happened was I actually, my boyfriend hit a deer with my car, and it triggered this traumatic anxiety in me. And I had never felt anxiety my whole life. I was in my early 30s. And that's what started my journey.
Wow.
actually. So I started inward. I started going to therapy, and I started just unraveling, who am I? And let's just release all these emotions that I've kept cooped up for 30 years and all that stuff. And that's when I really started unraveling and finding out who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of it all, I actually was hired by 2 different companies over the course of about 3 years. And they both created positions for me to help them change their culture.
Wow.
Both positions were eliminated. And so at that point, I took it as a sign from the universe. Okay, I'll get out of corporate and I'll start my business. And at the time, I was on my journey. I had gotten my first coaching certification. So it was all like, it all just fell into place.
Yeah. And what comes up for me as you're sharing that story is like so many of our awakening moments do come out of like an extremely traumatic, painful, stressful situation of some kind. So this unfortunate accident, thankfully, you did not say anyone was harmed other than it sounds like probably the deer in the car. But it was still like, a literal slamming the brakes in life and having to like renegotiate how things are happening. And I think that that's how a lot of us end up going. Like for me, the first time I was like, I don't think I can do this was in the public school system. I was super supportive of LGBTQ kids because they need a safe space. And I was closeted LGBTQ at the time. And I saw the judgment from fellow teachers. And I started to create a deliberate safe space for these kids at lunch that they could come into my classroom and like have a place they could talk about it because they didn't even feel safe going to guidance. And I started to realize, oh, by the rules of this system, I am not supposed to be supporting them in this way. And I could get in trouble and lose my job over this. And it was like that's so stupid. Like that was mind blowing to me that me providing a safe space could lead to the ending of my career and, all the other teacher, politic, workplace, overwork, parents, you name it. But that was really when I decided to go to be a healer and went to become a therapist. And then I realized, oh, well, if you're working for an agency, they're extremely predatory. They are profit driven, not outcome driven for their clients. The nonprofit I worked for was wonderful, but couldn't pay me enough money to actually like take care of myself in the way that I needed. So it was just like, I can't win, right? I have to hustle. I was literally hustling to try and make ends meet to do that. And that's just, it's not a sustainable thing. So how have you sustained yourself in this nomadic lifestyle in, stepping away from all of that? Like, what are some of your tricks, your tips, your whatever wisdom you've gained from the process of going through that?
Yeah, it hasn't been easy. And I will say that there was a lot of unraveling once I got out of corporate. Like, for example, I couldn't make enough money in corporate ever. I always wanted more, and I was never happy. And what I realized coming out of corporate, so going from like making 6 figures to unemployment, was a very, very interesting journey. And it actually showed me a lot about how I utilize money and what I actually need money for.
Mm-hmm.
So in large part, I was lucky enough to have had like a savings. I also sold my house, which I actually sold 2 houses. So I had like a bit of a chunk of savings that could help me while I was building, because I feel like nobody really tells you how hard it is to build a business. Nobody really says those things, right?
No.
And so it can be a bit of a roller coaster. And so as I was really learning how to like stabilize that roller coaster, I did have this like buffer of funds with me.
Mm-hmm.
I also, as I was traveling, I really honestly, like, so I use Airbnb. I reached out to people who had mansions, people who wanted for one day what I could afford in 1 month, and I was reaching out to these people and saying, hey, like, this is who I am. I'm on my journey. And are you willing to negotiate with me. Like, and I would ask this different stuff, you know. And one point I landed in Arizona. I had booked a casita that was
Mm.
a part of this huge mountain on the hills in Fountain Hills, a stunning place. And when I told her, she said, "Tell me a little bit about you and your journey." And when I told her, she said, "I think you're coming into my life for a reason." And
Wow.
so she gave me what I wanted for the casita. And when I got there, she toured the main house with me, and she was like, "I want you to use the main kitchen here," because there was like a cooktop in the casita. So she's like, "Just come over and use the main kitchen here. It's just safer. The laundry is here. There's 2 laundry rooms." Like, walking me through this house, and we get to the master bedroom, and there's this huge, like, freestanding tub. Like, you just look through these huge double doors of the master, and it's like super far away, this beautiful tub with these windows and the desert behind it. It was just so stunning. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like that tub." And she was like, "You come over and take a bath anytime you want." And then she's like, "Why don't you just stay in this house?" And so here I am, I'm staying in this gorgeous mansion. I ended up staying there for 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And these are the moments. And then friends, like, I've had so many friends that have invited me into their homes too, and that helps me balance. It has helped me balance as well. Like, right now I'm house sitting for my mother in New York. And so it's been a journey for sure. And another big thing that has really helped me, so asking, the first thing is really just not being afraid to say, "Hey, this is who I am, and I'm on this journey, and would you be willing to help me out, like, or meet me
Yeah.
where I am," you know, and have that conversation. Just ask. And then the other thing is that I've reached out to small businesses all along the way. So as a small business owner, I'm a super advocate now for our small businesses, just knowing what it
Mm.
takes to put into it. And so I've connected with small businesses all over the country now, and, you know, just built this network of people that want to support, you know. And how can I serve your community? How can I come in? What is your community missing? Like, what do you need right now?
Mhm.
And how can we support each other? And just really standing by that, not just like, how can you give something to me? You
Right.
know, how can we support each other and continue that relationship, honestly, if you want to? So those are a couple of the things that have worked for me. And honestly, just really constantly staying true to myself, because I recognize that I've built a slower business because I've chosen alignment.
Mhm.
I've
Mm.
decided I'm not gonna hustle my way to success. Like, I could do that, but I already did that and I didn't feel fulfilled. So now I can't do that because it stands against everything that I stand for.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. And I'm so in agreement with all, like, it takes deliberation, intention to really stay in alignment when there's so much distortion coming in from society, well-meaning loved ones, right? Who think this is the tried and true path and you have to stick to it. But in reality, when we slow down and we go within, we really realize what we need to thrive. And there's a parallel in our story here, but we also have a very different, like, we've had a very different history. Obviously, we're two totally different people, two totally different backgrounds. And so as I was listening, I was like, okay, that matches my experience, but what's different is I didn't have any backup when I decided I had to leave. Like, literally no money in savings, nothing, and I was kind of trusting my spouse to take over the therapy side of the business and figure out how to make it work when they were starting from scratch because they'd just finished their licensure and whatnot. But I was burnt out and I was like, I've got to go or I'm literally going to lose myself. And so I love that you brought up, like, what do I really need money for? Because that's a question, no matter your financial circumstances, that you can really ask yourself. And I'm not swimming in the dough yet because I've not even tried to really make money yet. I've been so in my, like, just, I'm going to relax. I'm going to allow my spirit to rejuvenate, my energy to rejuvenate. And I know that on the other side of that is abundance. But what I've discovered is I already have the abundance because I know what I need my money for. And there's so much satisfaction that can be here in life when we're not hustling, right? When we're constantly hustling and we're like on the move and we're trying to make ends meet, we like get so tangled up in this. I need to stay in this system in order to survive. And so what I've been like drastically learning is, oh, I didn't need to stay in the system to survive, because I actually need very little to survive, and I can fill my time with social networking, with, you know, connecting with people, with reading good books, with doing art, like being in my own alignment and energy. So I think that that's so powerful that you know, you said, what do you really need? Who can you ask? Like, where can you get that support? Who do you know that wants to support you? Like, these are things, no matter our circumstances, that we can really start to think about. And that small business networking is so important. And I admittedly need to do quite a bit more of it, because I just retired at the end of last year. So we're still a work in progress, but that is key. I know when we got connected, I went onto your website and I was like, oh my gosh, like she's got all these workshops coming up with all these different people, places. I imagine it's very exciting, but how do you kind of keep yourself grounded and centered as you're being the nomad?
Mm-hmm. This was a huge part of my journey because, well, number one, I decided to be nomadic because my energy felt stagnant where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so uprooting yourself that frequently. So 5 months is the longest I've stayed in a place, but normally it's about 1 month at a time. So I'm uprooting a lot. Now I am a Sag sun. So I like love it. And like I have so much in my chart that is just ready to be uncomfortable.
Mm.
That being said, just because I embrace uncomfortableness, then it doesn't mean that I don't have to work on my own grounding through it and
Yeah.
finding safety, right? So I had mentioned about like the Airbnbs that I reach out to. So environment is everything to me. So
Yeah.
I made a decision that I'm not going to compromise on value of the place that I'm willing to stay in just because of what I can or cannot afford. What I think I can or cannot afford.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for spaces that really like support the energy that I know that I am going to be in, like as I'm building this business, right? I am in a thriving, abundant environment, you know, and that's what I kept my focus on.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that has really helped me is Kundalini yoga.
Mm.
I also have a grounding practice that I do every day. It's actually on my YouTube channel. I learned it from an 80-year-old mystic on the road, who did like a spiritual initiation with me. And she said, "You are a teacher. Here's all the teachings I have channeled since I became a healer. And go out. You have rights to all of them. Go out and teach the world." And this is one of her practices that I teach everywhere I go, is this grounding practice. And so it's really forced me to find grounding and safety within myself.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I do, I had mentioned to you, is that I, early on in my business and building a business that I love, I decided to take 1 week off every month.
Yes. Oh my
And that,
gosh.
yeah, and that week, now I did book this call, that's this week for me. It's usually, lately I've been coinciding with my cycle. So I'm expecting my cycle this week. And so I've just really been giving myself the space, but every once in a while, I mean, like I booked this call. I just made a decision. It's just, I get to decide, and people aren't on my calendar booking, but I can decide if I, you know, if this is important to me and I want to meet with somebody that week, you know. And then basically it just gives me space to refresh my energy, go out and adventure, and really organize myself and keep myself set up for the life that I want to be leading.
Oh my
Because
gosh. Yeah.
so much we can be, you know, my business has grown for sure. I'm 5 years in business now, and there's stability there. It's not a roller coaster anymore. And so I'm at a point where, you know, I'm ready to work with a VA, and and get help and stuff like that. So I'm in that transition phase too. So there's a lot of energy that's moving, and I just regularly keep myself focused on what is the next thing I need to do. Not like, instead of what are all the things that need to happen, because there's a lot and it's never ending. But what is the next thing that I need to do? What's the most important thing for me to do? And I don't carry to-do lists. When I was in corporate, I had a list that I carried over, and it was like 10 pages long, like by the time like I was at the end of my banking career. And now I like scrap the list, and every week on Sunday, I write it again. I do a brain dump and I write out like, is this a priority this week? And I really just focus on what's a priority this week. And I trust that what needs to happen will always come back into my awareness.
Yes, that is, oh, I love that. Like, here is the recipe, friends. Like, making space for yourself and not overloading yourself, because that's something we joke about it in our business, because we have a little team of 4. It's basically my polycule plus our VA, and we've just discovered over the last 6 months, as we've really focused on the business, there is always something more to do. And if we're constantly chasing that, we will never rest, ever. We joke, we call it 3 tasks in a trench coat, because every one task you think you're going to do for your business, it ends up being at least 3. Like, every time I'm like, oh, I'm going to go on my website, I'm going to update this one thing. And then I realize, oh, this link here is broken. Let me go fix that. Oh, I need to update this to the new link over. It's just, it always unravels. And so another tip in there is just to allot more time to each task than you think you need, because it's going to be 3 tasks in a trench coat. And even if you can't take a full week, like you're able to, Kristin, like a CEO day, or a day, like if you're the CEO of a business, or just I like to call it creative still time day, where it's like, during this span of time, there is nothing I have to do. I'm going to be in creative stillness and allow what I want to do to make itself known. So I love that, like, you have this intentionality. My schedule is blocked. No one can book. But if I feel inspired, I get to say yes to something. I'm planning, oh, this is bold. This is the first time I've said it publicly. I'm thinking of taking my entire birthday month of June off.
Yes.
It'd be the first time ever. Is your birthday in June?
December,
but you're thinking of taking your whole birthday month off. And like, I'm very, can I do it? But I know that if I give myself that creative still time, hit July, I'm going to be like a whole new person, and I'm going to have all of this energy to offer, because I deeply nourished myself first. And I think that that's, yes, I will absolutely agree with what you said. Like, education and agencies, it's basically the same as corporate. It's just a different, all the corporations have different focuses. There was no rest in those spaces. And it was very much give of yourself first. And then maybe somewhere down the line will let you give back to yourself. That is not sustainable. When we actually start to put ourselves first, we have so much more energy to give and so much more productivity to give. Like, it boggles my mind. It's something I would love to speak in more corporations about, is like, if you actually take care of your people first, your bottom line will go up. Like, you'll actually thrive more as a business. And I don't know why we have not made that connection yet.
I think I've actually been thinking a lot about this, because I also want to get back into corporate, just because I have 15 years there, and I don't believe I have all of that knowledge and wisdom to just, completely shift gears. Like, I feel like there's some bridge there that I'm meant to go back to, but waiting for it to land. But I believe that, like, pitching to these organizations about caring for their people, so many of them want to see the data behind it, right? Like, give me the numbers, give me the proof, blah, blah, blah. And I always talk about, at one of the last companies that I worked for, I sent the president of the company a TED Talk about big data. And the TED Talk was about a Nokia study where Nokia hired somebody to go out and figure out the next big things in cell phones. So she goes out and sits in all these coffee shops and basically comes back to Nokia and says, here's, people are looking for like computers in their hands. You need to basically create the smartphone is what she said. And they said, no, like the data doesn't show this. That's not what we're going to do, but thanks. And so what happens? Nokia goes out of business. And I think that sometimes, well, right now, the environment that we live in, I feel like leaders focus on hiring people for skill, and they're not really considering culture. And then they have this mishmash of people that don't really jive together. And they're like, where's our culture? Like, what? Maybe we should have a culture. Maybe we should have values. These people don't align with our values. How did they get here? And it's like always an afterthought. Whereas I would love to actually go in and help the leaders align to who they are, so that they start hiring for people that are actually aligned with the culture that they're trying to create. And I believe that self-care then naturally happens, because now these people are aligned and they're not just a cog in the wheel. Like they're not just there to produce. It's more like, actually, like we're all on the same team here.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So, but I think now the way that it has been built, what happens is actually leadership needs to be comfortable with when these people figure out their alignment, and when leadership figures out their alignment, they have to know that there's likely going to be some attrition. Like there's going to be people that leave.
Right.
And there has to be a comfort level with that. And so much of the way we've done business, it's like we're doing it to make ends meet instead of building it from a space of alignment. So it's a total shift in the way that we do business. And I think, I just think that that's part of where it needs to start. Because otherwise they're like, of course, self-care is an afterthought because they're focused on productivity.
Yep.
And if it were shifted into alignment and culture, we're all a team, then we'd actually give a damn about each other.
We would. Yeah. It's like, these are the things that when you take that big enough step back, that you can see the issues. The problem is so many people are in it, right? They're so deep in it, they cannot see. Can't see the forest through the trees, right? Like they literally can't see the issues because it's just how it's always been. It's the expectation, and they just move forward. And I recently had a friend with an old colleague, and she is a CEO of a business, and way larger business than mine. And she said, man, we've just had all these hiring issues lately, because exactly that, they would hire for the skill. And she's like, but they didn't meet our culture at all. And all of a sudden there was like gossip and like infighting. And she's like, I just don't know what happened. And I think that's exactly it. Like most people can either learn skills or develop skills, or if you actually get them in their alignment, they show you what they're really good for. Like they show you what they love to do. You know, I think of, I had a client about a year and a half ago, and she loved doing insurance paperwork. That sounds miserable to me. She loved it. Over the moon, like could do this insurance paperwork all day long. And her company kept being like, well, we want you to go over here and train these new staff members. Okay, we're going to give you an assistant. You need to train the assistant. And then she's going to take over doing some of your insurance paperwork. And then we want you to come over here and teach this to the group. And she's like miserable, absolutely miserable, because she's like, I just want to do my insurance paperwork. But they kept trying to put her in another role, and it destroyed her mental health. And she ended up having to take like 6 weeks off of work just to get herself back down to her baseline. And she comes back in and she's just like, I just want to do the insurance paperwork. And when you let me do it, see how much money I save you, because I actually like doing it. Right. So when we actually let people do what they like to do, and they have skills, talents, gifts for, that also raises the bottom line. Like, again, it's this, let people do what they thrive in, and let them show up as themselves authentically in the community of the workplace. And the culture can change. I truly believe it can. We just have to keep talking about it.
Have you read The Big Leap? So I think it's Jay Hendricks, if I'm not mistaken, but it's all about uh, well, a big part of it actually is how like when you're moving to the next level, how you will literally like make yourself physically sick because you're
Mm-hmm.
going there. And then we look at that as a sign, like maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But when you get out of your comfort zone, really like all the resistance is going to come up and however it forms, right? Sometimes physically.
Yes.
And so recognizing that, but also he talks about these different levels of genius or zones. Like there's zone of genius, which is the highest level, zone of excellence. I don't even remember the other two. I think there's two other ones, but
Yeah,
zone of
this
excellence.
sounds familiar.
Yeah. So your insurance paper girl might have been in her zone of excellence, right? Which is just the things we're really good at. Like we can just do them all day long, but they don't necessarily light us up. Like it gives us a purpose, but it's not like the reason we're here.
Mm-hmm.
The zone of genius is that space. So I think it's also important to know what people are striving for too, right? Because not everybody, and this has been a huge lesson for me, is not everybody's seeking their zone of genius and
Right.
to be on that like pure divine path. Like some people are like, this is just a means to an end for me too. I'm just trying to make some money so that I can go travel or do whatever. Right. And
Right.
so for me, I'm really like, why did I actually come here as a human? Like, why am I actually here right now? And what am I supposed to be delivering to the collective? Like, that's what's
Yeah.
always on my mind and what I'm always seeking alignment with. And it's constantly evolving with me. But not everybody's on that journey.
Yeah, and again, some people are just totally like they're happy to have a job they go to that they can
Yeah.
perform, and then they come home and the rest of the time is theirs, right? That's definitely being a small business owner is not that. It is an entirely different lifestyle. But I do think that that small business or entrepreneurship is for those people who are really like pursuing some out of the box dream or purpose, that they need the vehicle to discover that with, and often we discover that in the cultivating of our businesses. So have you kind of honed in on what your core purpose is, or do you feel like you're still uncovering that day by day?
I mean, right now, a lot of my purpose has to do with activating fulfillment and purpose in others. It's also about freedom of expression.
Mm,
So really
yeah.
like I hold space just because I was tempered for so long in corporate, or like I was always out of the box and they just kept trying to put me in the box over and over and over again. It was super frustrating for me. And so now my work is really about helping people find their true expression and
Yeah.
having the courage to be that version of themselves in the world. And that's with everything, how they build business, right? Taking a full month off for your birthday, or like I take a week off every month and I only allow bookings Tuesday through Thursday.
I love those boundaries.
Like I'm very like I'm setting standards and I'm just deciding this is how I can build my business. And the amount of people that will sit there and say you can't build a business like that, you need to open up more, you need to be working more, you need to be blah blah blah. And it's like, no, actually I can build a business how I want to build one.
Yeah.
And just like, do I need to be on social media, do I not need to be on social media, how often do I need to be posting on social media? Like all of these things we have, there's so many rules and systems that we can plug into,
Yep.
but that freedom is what matters to me. Like really just dismantling all those attachments to really understand, actually, this is who I am and this is how I want to show up. And then having the courage to do that, because when we choose that path, we're always going to feel pressure to come to the norm.
Oh
Always,
my God. Every day.
always. So it takes so much courage to walk that path that
Mhm.
nobody else is walking right now, or to do the thing. Like, I mean, I'm like, if you like to do tie-dye and bake cookies, then build a business around tie-dyeing and baking cookies. Like I'm
Right.
just like literally like we can do anything.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my
Anything.
gosh. So last year I took in way too much information from coaches. Like I was in every program that came my way, every master class, every person that said, Safrianna, you're doing something special. I want to work with you. I was like, sign me up. I had business savings at that point. That's where all of my savings went, was getting all of this, amassing this knowledge from everyone else's perspective. And I remember there was a moment I asked a successful business owner who was mentoring me, like, how did you know when you'd made it? And, when did you know you could leave your sort of traditional 9 to 5? And her response was basically like, oh, you have to have you have to have money and savings. You have to have a backup plan. You need to build the bridge, and you just have to keep grinding until you get there. And I was like, screw that. Like at that point, I was done with her wisdom. I was like, this wisdom is not for me. And it was about 3 months after that I made the call, and I just completely left my traditional therapy career. And of course, I built the ramp for my clients and phased them out appropriately and
Mhm.
trauma informed and all of that. But like I hit a point, I was like, I have to take the leap. And like I said, no backup plan, no money in savings at this point, because I've literally poured everybody else's wisdom into my brain. And I've just spent the last 6 months getting back into, okay, what's really mine, right?
Mhm.
That alignment piece. And so my current work is very much your current mission and purpose, to like just help people be aligned and like help them speak their truth and be in their truth and live in their truth. But I'm discovering more and more that my purpose, and I still don't entirely know what this means, this is the beyond the business by far, is to be the energy of peaceful harmony. And I'm like still figuring out what that means, but I have the freedom to figure out what that means now that I'm not locked into everybody else's rules. And so I love this, like that you're so focused on the freedom and the liberation and the getting out of the way that we have to be into
Mhm.
how do I actually want to be.
Mhm.
Be being the key word here, not do, but how do I want to be? Because the doing follows that, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. Something that I've had to learn to accept, because I'm such a deep person, and I love, like, when I build a relationship with somebody, I love being there with them on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my work looks like being a catalyst, having a conversation with somebody and being a catalyst in their life. And even though I can see so deeply into what's possible for them, and I'd love to be there alongside with them, it sometimes my work is just to turn it on. It's
Yeah.
just to activate it, and I always say that, when we're speaking, like when you and I are speaking, whoever's listening, if there's parts that are like lighting up when you say something, when I say something, like those are our souls speaking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't turn that off. Like once it's been lit up, you can't shut it down. So that's a big piece of it too. The catalyst is literally like turning the lights back on inside.
Mm-hmm. I love that. My friend Red, who I do a biweekly live with, she is a catalyst. Catalyst. That's literally one of her like life themes,
Mhm.
and I wonder if it's one of your life themes too. But it's such an important role to like shine the light on people, give them a little zhuzh of energy, and light that soul back up, because especially in modern society, we're born with that, it's there, and then we start to take in all of this outside information. And just like me with that hardcore year of coaching, where I'm like, oh, I have to do this exactly this way. It was just re-stepping back into the same system of corporate, right? Of like, oh, I have to play by all of these rules. To know that our soul makes the rules, like our soul determined what rules we want to play by, and you get to light that back up in people. Like that's
Mhm.
such an incredible thing to do. Like I'm sure you feel the ripple effect of that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's taken, it's taken me work to put my ego aside and say it's okay. Like we just, we're just the catalyst for this person. And
Yeah, as a
um,
business owner, that can be disappointing when you're like, I
yeah,
really want to work with you. And they're like,
yeah,
no, I just needed you to kick me in the butt for 5 seconds. And now I'm moving on my journey.
yeah, yeah. I actually was listening to, I just feel called to share this. On Friday, I went to a Creative Mornings. I don't know if you've ever been to Creative Mornings. So it's a worldwide organization that picks a theme each month. And I think the theme was vibrant. If don't quote me on that, but I think that was a theme. So, anyways, all these chapters all over the world will bring someone in from the community to speak about this particular topic or theme. And then you can listen to all these varying perspectives on this one theme. It's pretty cool. And it's free and offered by the community, led by volunteers. And I used to volunteer for them years ago. And so when Kelly, the chapter host, had found out I was coming into town, she's like, I'm getting you on the list for both May and June. So May was the first time I had been back in a while. And there was a professor there and he was talking about polarity. And the particular polarity that he was discussing was creativity and conformity.
Mm.
And he was talking about like the upside of both, right? The upside and the downside of both, and like understanding where you really sit. So I'm like very much like high creativity and boo on conformity. And so, he was talking about like how, people who are high in conformity, how they can look down on creativity, right? Because there's uncertainty, it's risky, like they don't know what's going to happen, whatever. And what was really powerful for me, because he was basically saying like you can't overextend one end of the polarity, right? Just like we know with masculine feminine dynamics, right? Which is one of the polarities that I speak about often, or ego and intuition even, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was really cool for me to hear this, and that creativity actually leads into conformity, because it's through what we create that we actually disseminate new wisdom and knowledge that creates conformity from what was created. And that was super
Hmm.
cool to hear, because I was like I said, I'm very much like boo conformity. So like my whole like catalyst work a lot of times is in disrupting conformity or disrupting the way people think about things, and I think that's a big piece of my work. And it's not just to disrupt for disruption, but it is to really question everything. And I learned that through coaching, like really
Yeah.
questioning everything that we do, because it's like, is this really what I want? Why am I doing this? Does
Yes.
this matter to me?
I love that. Questioning everything was a lesson that I taught my students. I mainly taught eighth grade English. That's a whole other lifetime. But I hated the curriculum. I was like, this is not what they need to be learning. So I would try to slip in whatever I could wherever I could. And that was one of the phrases I would literally say: question everything. Don't just, and I'm sure my fellow teachers were like, oh my God, stop telling them that because they're questioning me on everything. But I'd ask them, question me on everything. Don't take my word for it. What's true for you?
Mhm.
What's authentic for you? Like what do you want to pursue? What do you want to learn? Like we if we conform immediately without questioning, we lose that spark of self. But that is such an interesting framework. I'm going to have to sit with that and just digest that more. The creativity leading to conformity, because I can absolutely see that, right? If I'm
Mhm.
teaching something, it's because I believe in the wisdom of it, and I want you to believe in the wisdom of it too, which absolutely can be conforming.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was
Big
like,
things.
I came to this talk for a reason, you
That
know.
is so cool. Just I love spectrums, like spectrums
Mhm.
of existence, and where do we fall at any given time. And I think we ebb and we flow, and it's just so much fun. So as we're kind of winding down here, I just want to go back to the kombucha thing really quick because I have to know because people have very big opinions on kombucha. You either love it or you hate it, and most people smell it and they're like, no, I'm not going there. So, like, what's the story there? Why are you an aficionado now?
I am because, I don't know, personal story, or if this is going to be TMI for so many people, but I actually at one point had this pain in my lower abdomen that I went to the doctor on and had all these tests done. And he basically said, you have IBS, because nothing came back conclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So I started drinking kombucha, not because of that, but I just started drinking kombucha, and I didn't take any medicine for the IBS. Kombucha healed all my symptoms.
I believe it.
So I'm a huge fan of probiotics and healing the gut. I also take a probiotic, prebiotic, and digestive enzyme every day too. Now, on top of kombucha, I drink kombucha every day. And I support small. So it's part of everything that I do. So when I go to new places, I'm seeking out like the local brewers, and then I'm going to talk to them. Like I just went to one of our farmers and artisans places, and I bought a share for one of the local brewers here. Buffalo has like four or five brewers. So I'm always supporting small. But one of the biggest things with kombucha, I mean, yeah, there's probiotics in it, which is a huge benefit. Also, like fun fact, water kefir, which would be like an alternative probiotic drink, similar to kombucha, but not as vinegary. Water kefir has more probiotics in it. So if you can find a good water kefir place, like that's also really fun. But really just trying, so many of the brewers are so different. So it's trying different ones. Like some of them brew so that you don't taste a lot of the alcohol. Another really interesting thing to know is that some of the big brands like the Kavitas and GTS and stuff like that do have quite a bit of sugar in them. If you watch the sugar, the local brands have very little sugar in them. Many of them do, maybe not all of them, but you can pick up a can that has 6-8 grams of sugar in it. Whereas like a bottle of Kavita might have 25 grams of sugar in it. So another like reason to promote small. I don't know why that's a thing, but it's just something that I've noticed. So yeah. So I think it's like kind of like wine. Like I remember when I first tried wine or like when I was like adjusting my taste to it, my mom loves like oaked Chardonnay. And I literally we used to go to wine tastings, and I would tell people like, whatever you have that tastes like trees, that's what my mom wants. Because I hated the oaked so much, but it's similar, right? Like, so people tend to do sweeter with wines first, right? And then evolve. And actually, like even with ciders, I like dry ciders, because my tastes have just evolved that much. But anyways, if you've tried kombucha and you didn't love it, try it again. Just try different flavors. Look for local brands. I actually started a list of like rad brands. Like I have a list on my phone of like, these are the brands, because I've tried so many of them.
I love that I asked this because there were so many gems in there. One, how many of us now entrepreneurs had some kind of chronic illness and or gut issue? Seriously, it's everywhere. So I don't think that was TMI at all. I think that was an inspirational story because so many of us are struggling with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Two, that you support local, and I'll just plant the seed because I'm so radical. I imagine that the big brands put so much sugar in it because we're highly addicted to sugar, and we're going to want to go back for the sweeter things over the more vinegary things, right? And when there's a health product that comes out, which kombucha can really truly promote a lot of health, a lot of the big corporations will try and sweep in on that that craze and capitalize on it, and often miss the underlying wisdom of the original thing, right? Whether it's plant medicine or a particular recipe or whatever. So just things to think about. But of course, I love that you support small and local as much as you can. That's something I'm really passionate about, that Living Lunas is really passionate about, is us seeing each other as the humans we are, supporting one another, like cheering each other on, and not just, one person at the top of something, but an entire community and infrastructure, a system that sees everyone as the individuals that they are. So thank you for all that you do in the world, and just how you show up, and this freedom that you move toward in all that you do, and the catalyst energy that you bring. Like, it really is truly tremendous. So I thank you very much for that. It's a heart service to the world to show up in these ways. It's big and brave.
Thank you for seeing me.
Yes. So is there anything else that you feel compelled to share today? Or do you feel complete?
I feel complete. Yeah, I'm over here thinking about all the amazing things that you're doing too, that we didn't talk a lot about. But also, like, just reflecting that the beauty you see in me is the beauty that I see in you.
Well, I thank you for that. And that's, that is at the ethos, the cornerstone of everything that I put out in the world, is that when we hold space like this for one another and we just listen, like, we see the commonalities, we see our shared experiences. Again, like, you and I, very different backgrounds, very different circumstances, yet so much shared wisdom. And it's by talking and connecting that we begin to heal the world around us, because we see that spark of one another. So thank you for being a part of this soul connection, and again, for all that you do. And if you have a question for Kristin, or you want to connect with her, you absolutely can. Her URL is right there, so right here on the video and in the show comments. So thank you so much. I'd love to have another conversation with you in the future if you ever feel so called. And otherwise, it has been a pleasure. I am so honored to know you and to have met you.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right. So until our next Soul Connection call, friends, if you have any follow-up questions, if you're catching the replay, leave us a comment. Let us know if there's anything that you have follow-up questions on. We are so happy to serve you and be in community with you, and just keep pouring that love out into the world. All right. Until